expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
Welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm John Dickerson. The elections just keep on coming, and tomorrow is Republican primary day in Utah and South Carolina. And we have new polls in Colorado and Florida. There are some important Senate races there, and to help us sort through all of that is CBS News Director of Elections, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, let's start in Utah in that Republican primary race. What's happening there?
Well, I think this race is notable almost for who's not in it. Incumbent Senator Bob Bennett, as you recall, was knocked off at the party convention some time back by a lot of Tea Party activists. So now this is Tim Bridgewater facing off against Mike Lee for the Republican nomination. And again, it's a lot of Tea Party influence here. They've sort of already won in a sense. And this one looks to be close, but Bennett himself has actually endorsed Bridgewater, which could be the difference here, and he's up a little bit in some of the polls.
And in this case, Bennett helping, you know, there was a period when he was the kiss of death, but you think that'll help Bridgewater?
I do, perhaps, and here's why. Yes, he was ousted, but polls leading up to that showed that a lot of Republicans did still like him. So it may be that in the broader voting of the primary tomorrow, you'll get some of those more perhaps moderate Republicans in, and that's where his endorsement could carry some weight. We'll see.
And this will be a red state, though, in the general, right?
It likely will. You know, whoever wins tomorrow really does have a leg up, being Utah, always one of the most Republican states in the nation. And, you know, speaking of that very quickly, there's an interesting primary on the Democratic side in a congressional district out there, Utah 2, where Jim Matheson, the incumbent, is trying to fend off a challenge from his left. This is a district that, as a conservative Democrat, he's certainly been reelected there, despite it being a Republican district, Republican state. But the challenge from the left could show, from Claudia Wright, could show a little bit of liberal base being disgruntled at having a conservative, more conservative Democrat there.
That's right. He's facing right from the left. All right, let's go to South Carolina now, another red state. Finally, we're going to have a vote in the governor's race there. We think it's going to be Nikki Haley, right?
That is what the polling suggests, absolutely. Obviously, she did by far the best, although she didn't qualify for the outright win back in the initial primary. She got just under the 50% that she needed. She had a fairly sizable gap. And so that, you think, going into this runoff does give her the edge. So that, coupled with polling, looks like that's how it'll turn out.
And this is another state where it's expected that the winner of the Republican primary will end up winning in November, in which case you'd have a woman of Indian descent who would perhaps be the governor of South Carolina, and somebody who has survived attacks both on her fidelity in marriage and on her religion. It's kind of an extraordinary race.
Yeah, it really is, and I think what you look at when you see those attacks, and the fact that, if anything, and the poll suggests they've even helped her, is that she seems to have weathered them fairly well. And, you know, I think it's interesting. Yeah, it may be that it's a red state, and certainly looking ahead to the fall, Republican has the leg up. But I also think you look then even further down the road to the South Carolina Republican primary in 2012, where whoever's the sitting governor could play a strong role. So political junkies may look at the calendar even further than that.
That's right. There's already speculation about her presidential future. All right, let's go south down to Florida. There's a new poll there about that Senate race.
Yeah, there is. In Florida, you know, you have Charlie Crist, of course, who's announced that he's running as an independent. He's the sitting governor, and he's got, as the latest polls show, he's got approval ratings in the high 50s, 57% it was, I think, in the Quinnipiac poll. So it certainly gives him a leg up, and certainly visibility there in what's now going to be a three-way race, it looks like, between him and Marco Rubio, and perhaps Kendrick Meek on the Democratic side, though he's probably facing some challenges of his own.
And Crist, who was thought to be dead, he's now ahead of Rubio in the polls and seems to be taking it all out of Kendrick Meek's hide. And we'll have to, I guess, see how strongly the Democratic establishment comes out for Kendrick Meek, because they don't all dislike Crist now that he's an independent. and is causing heartburn for the Republicans. Let's do now our final race of the day, which is in Colorado, the Republican primary there. What's happening there?
In Colorado, you know, we had thought, of course, on the Democratic side, there'd be a tight race, and it seems like there is. But on the Republican side, Jane Norton, who was thought to be going to walk away with this, is being challenged by Ken Buck. Also got some Tea Party backing. He's had a strong grassroots campaign, and we've seen a poll or two out now that has Buck up, actually, and he's trying to have an anti-establishment pitch to the campaign, which, as we've seen already this primary season, may have some resonance. I would say this, though, about Colorado, still a number of weeks off from the primary, and if we've learned anything so far about primaries, California, Nevada, most recent examples, is that a lot of voters, sometimes pains me to say this, but don't pay attention to all this politics until very close to the election. So there's still probably a long way to go. These things have broken late so far this season. That said, it looks like a race.
Now, if Norton falls and it's Buck, do we then have a pattern here in the Kentucky election of Rand Paul and then also in the Sharon Angle in Nevada? Just in terms of this, is he in that class? Is he that same kind of candidate?
Well, certainly trying to come out with the anti-establishment message and to try and portray Norton, whether she is or she isn't the establishment candidate, trying to say that he is anti-establishment, would certainly fit in that mold, absolutely. And then I think it sets up an interesting dynamic for the fall, again speculating that Buck actually would win. The dynamic for the fall then becomes a state, it's a swing state. Obama was able to pull it back for the Democrats for the first time in so many years, back in 2008, where you would have Michael Bennet, perhaps, coming out of his primary on the Democratic side, first time he's facing the voters against someone with that anti-establishment Tea Party message on the right, on the Republican side, and that would certainly be one of our most competitive and compelling races for the fall.
Right, competitive and compelling, and also it's the one state in which you have these insurgent forces in both parties operating. You've got somebody trying to come at Bennett from the left, and now you've got a kind of Tea Party candidate on the right. So we've got both of those storylines finally in one state. We'll be spending a lot of time with Colorado. Anthony, thanks so much.
Welcome. Thanks.
And now for something completely different. Last week, the FDA considered the approval of one of the drugs trying to become what has been called the female Viagra. The company didn't even get to first base. Our Christina Ruffini has the story. Take a look.
The makers of flibanserin, sometimes known as the little pink pill or female Viagra, were hoping for a home run at their FDA hearing. But the pill, which claims to treat low libido in women, failed to score.
I think that basic issues of methodology should be worked out.
I voted no. Do not believe they provided sufficient evidence.
They did not show an improvement in sexual desire.
Citing both a lack of evidence and a lack of efficacy, the committee voted 11-0 that the benefits of taking the drug did not outweigh its risk or side effects. The real debate, however, was over the diagnosis, not the treatment.
There is no empirical evidence for a normal baseline level of desire to measure low desire against.
With some experts claiming that FSDD, female hypoactive sexual desire disorder, is a condition manufactured by drug companies, along with a cure.
Women don't need treatments with real side effects for imaginary diseases invented by marketers.
Others argued that low sex drive is a painful problem for many women, and that they need and deserve a medical solution.
Women will continue to seek medical care and will be prescribed off-label medications or compounded products, or not know how to help themselves and find their distress levels rising and often their relationships deteriorating.
Drug companies have been racing to develop a female counterpart for Viagra for almost a decade, but the hearing proved once again that when it comes to satisfying the ladies, it's just not that simple.
Psychosocial and interpersonal factors are the main culprits hampering sexual desire for women. It is no surprise to me at all that women ages 30 to 50 have so low sexual desire.
Although the committee didn't approve the drug, they agree that female sexual disorders are a real problem, one that needs more treatment and better diagnosis. Christina Ruffini, Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Finally today, after Sunday's Face the Nation, our Bob Schieffer and Florida Senator Bill Nelson talked about BP CEO Tony Hayward's decision to take in a little yachting over the weekend, and they also discussed the oil spill's impact on Florida's beaches. Take a look.
Well, Senator Nelson, that was quite a session this morning. I must say the Republicans came down so hard on Joe Barton, I didn't even have to ask you Democrats about it. What do you think came over Joe Barton to say something like, we need to apologize to BP?
I think some of the oil state representatives are so much an advocate for the oil industry that they lose judgment and perspective. And I think that's been part of the problem, where the oil industry has ruled the roost with the government regulator, the Minerals Management Service. And as a result, we're seeing, sadly, the tragedy that came out of that lack of government regulation. And we've got to turn that around. I think the president is beginning to turn that around. But now, those of us on the Gulf and possibly the East Coast are going to have to suffer the consequences for some time to come.
And also, talk about sticking your foot in your mouth. Tony Hayward, the head of BP, going off to a yacht race of all things on this particular weekend. Is he going to just eventually have to go, do you think?
I think those guys are sensitivity challenged. And, you know, they just...
That's another way to say tone deaf.
And they are just not in the real world to realize the suffering that is going on now and how much it's going on in the future. And appearances do matter. And words do matter. And they just don't get it. So I suspect they're going to have to clean house over there in BP, just like they're continuing to clean house in the MMS.
And how bad is it in Florida right now?
Well, the winds have blessed us by keeping most of it away. It's been hitting the beaches in Florida for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, but not a complete onslaught, because what's happening, some days it'll bring it in and then the wind shifts and it'll take it back out. Right now, it's hitting Walton County and a little bit in Panama City Beach. But then tomorrow, the projection is it goes back out to sea and comes back in on Tuesday. So we're going to be faced with this for quite a long while, simply because there's so much oil out there in the Gulf.
All right. Well, Senator, we wish you the very best, and the folks down in Florida. Thanks
Bob.
for being with us.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thanks to all of you for watching Washington Unplugged. Join us again tomorrow on CBSNews.com. I'm John Dickerson. Have a great day.